It was 1865. The Civil War had just ended, and in Washington there was nothing but celebration. People were in the streets, cheering because the war was over and the North had won. But not everybody shared this viewpoint. There were still those who were angry over the South's defeat, and who did not rejoice at the North's victory. John Wilkes Booth was a famous actor and a notoriously respectable Southern gentleman. He wasn't happy with the South's defeat. In fact, he was devastated by it. He had been a part of a conspiracy midway through the war to kidnap Abraham Lincoln, which ultimately fell through. After the North's victory, John Wilkes Booth and three other conspirators planned to commit a crime that would grip a nation. They were going to kill the president. John Wilkes Booth, David Harold, George Astorot, and Lewis Powell were all part of the plot and had a target to kill, except for David Harold, who was simply to assist Lewis Powell on his mission. George Astorot was to kill the vice president, Andrew Johnson, at his hotel. Lewis Powell's target was William Seward, who was recovering from a carriage accident, making the assassination very convenient. David Harold was simply assisting Lewis Powell by holding his horse outside, as Lewis Powell did his job inside. John Wilkes Booth was keeping the most notorious role of all, killing the President of the United States. Mary Surratt was to supply Booth and Harold with a revolver and carbine after the assassination. Booth knew Ford's Theater very well. He planned to barricade the door to the President's box, and after assassinating Lincoln, he would leap onto the stage and make his escape. Booth's assassination plot succeeded, and he escaped with only a broken leg. After jumping onto the stage, Booth gave his final performance. He held the bloody knife up victoriously and shouted, "Sic semper tyrannis," which is Latin for "thus only to tyrants," and serves as Virginia's state motto. Lewis Powell, disguised as a messenger with medicine, forced his way into the Seward's house and attacked William Seward with a knife. George Astorot's target was Vice President Andrew Johnson, but instead of murdering him, Astorot went to a local saloon and drank the night away, leaving Andrew Johnson completely unharmed. Booth escaped to a closed bridge, talking his way across. Harold followed him shortly afterwards. Harold and Booth met near Soper's Hill. Dr. Mudd had been involved in the kidnapping plot, but knew nothing about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Booth came to Dr. Mudd to fix his leg, which needed to be set before they could continue on their escape effectively without being caught. Dr. Mudd eventually figured out that Booth and Harold were involved in Lincoln's assassination and ordered them to leave his house, which they did. Booth and Harold then prepared to cross the Potomac River. Their plans hinged on there being some sympathetic Southerners in Virginia. The Hughes family helped them willingly, but the Lucas family helped them only under duress. The Garrett family was the only one who would house Booth and Harold, even under false pretenses. Tipped off, the cavalry rode to the Garrett's house and threatened to burn John Wilkes Booth and David Harold out of the tobacco barn. David Harold surrendered himself to the manhunters, but John Wilkes Booth had no intention of suffering trial and hanging. He was going to go out in a blaze of glory. Booth was getting his rifle ready to fire when one of the cavalrymen, Boston Corbett, shot through the wooden boards. Booth died the next morning.